What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Hope you guys are having a great Thursday. If you're listening to this on a Thursday, that's when it should be uploaded. Hope you're having a great Thursday so far. Um, it is getting beautiful. The weather right now, mid May, and super exciting just to see or just to feel the weather get warmer. Sun is out. Going on more walks, trying to. Getting outside, I think going outside is so important. Helps us to just relax, in my opinion. Helps us to just take a step back from all the busyness that's going on in our lives, and just I don't know. It sounds kind of like woo-woo-y and kind of cheesy, but just to be out in nature and hear the birds chirping, feel the wind, feel the sun. It just does something else to you, and I think doing that every single day is super important. So trying to do that more. Just been crazy busy these past few weeks. We've had so much stuff going on, the vacation. We had Aiden just got baptized this past Sunday, our 6-month-old son, if you're new here. This weekend we're going to one of my friend's son's birthday parties, and then the following weekend, I think we have something else going on the following weekend. But then we'll be also getting the keys to our house that we'll be moving into, and then getting the moving process started. And then it's my brother-in-law's wedding. So just back to back to back. And then obviously we'll be trying to get the house ready and everything to move in, and getting everything moved and situated all throughout June. And yeah, it's been back to back to back. And I'm sure a lot of you listening probably feel like your life is like that, maybe all the time, or at least right now too. But I wanted to come on here today and just briefly talk about something that's been on my mind a lot this past week, which is I've been thinking a lot about identity and, the types of labels or roles we assign ourselves with, and how powerful they can be, and how powerful or how hard breaking from some of those identities or those labels can be. And I was thinking about this because I was thinking about all of the types of training that I've done in the past, right? When I started my fitness journey really back in 2013, I was lifting, but I was doing kind of a lot of cardio, and I was doing a lot of insanity. So I kind of felt like this insanity guy. And if you're not familiar with insanity, workout videos, high intensity cardio, a lot of hit, a lot of plyometrics, jumping, and things like that. And then I switched to being more in the lifting / bodybuilding style trainer. I never competed as a bodybuilder. I never did any of that, but my training was really focused around that. And I was focused on strictly pretty much improving my physique. Sure, I aimed to get stronger week to week over time. That's what you want to do, even if you are just focused on building muscle and building your physique. And that even if you don't care about strength, you still need to progress in strength, because that's going to yield to more muscle growth and better overall shape and everything. But that's where my training was really focused on, from kind of I would say 2014 to probably almost 2016 ish. And then it was around 2016-ish where I started dabbling into powerlifting a little bit more. And I was doing more powerlifting style training, testing my 1 rep max, doing different variations strictly to improve my 1 rep max. And it was I still focus on building muscle, because that's super important for powerlifting and getting stronger. The more muscle you have, the more potential you have to lift more weight. But I would do certain exercises to strictly improve my strength in those powerlifting lifts. And it was okay, I'm going to do, I don't know, bench press with bands, because I think it's going to help me gain more explosiveness, not necessarily do bench press with bands to build more muscle. So I started shifting my training towards that a little bit. And, I got away from the bands stuff, as I went on and everything. But from 2016 to now, 2016, 2017, I was really in on the powerlifting stuff, and I probably was maybe 50-50 powerlifting, bodybuilding up until 2018. And then it was 2018, 2019 where I was okay, probably 60% or 65% maybe even 70% of my training was more towards powerlifting, and then 30% maybe towards bodybuilding. So it was this shift, right? So the point I'm trying to make is, I went through these kind of identity shifts with my training of somebody who was trying to be more like well-rounded and do a bunch of cardio too, to somebody who was strictly focused on, let me just try to build the most muscle as possible, and then went to somebody who wanted to dabble in the strength a little bit more, and then someone who like really started prioritizing the powerlifting lifts. And I feel like with each change in identity, each phase, there were some growing pains with that. And there was like this feeling of, I don't know, kind of feeling a little bit lost, I guess. And I was like kind of losing myself a little bit, because I think, when we create these identities about ourselves in our head, whether they're in our head or reality, we get attached to them because they help us feel secure. Because I think overall feeling secure and feeling like we know who we are is comforting, right? If you're somebody who you don't have any passions, or you don't know a way to describe yourself, then you feel a little lost and you don't really know who you are as a person. At least that's how you feel. Like think about like when you would sit in a classroom, go around the room, maybe in high school or college, and they'd be like, hey, go around the room, let's do an icebreaker, which I absolutely hated these things. I would get petrified, like so much anxiety thinking about everyone in the classroom looking at me having to just like say my name, say where I'm from, say my major or whatever, or say what I like to do for fun, or state like a unique fact about yourself, right? I hated doing that. But like, think about, there were maybe times where we, like your classroom did those icebreakers and you had no idea what to say as far as the questions like, oh, what is something you like to do for fun? Or what is something unique about you, right? They always act like a fun fact about you that nobody would know, or something like that. If you didn't have an answer to those questions, you probably were maybe a little bit nervous, or you felt like uncomfortable sharing because you were like thinking in your head before they started to get to your name and like think like, okay, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? But if you're somebody who automatically just knows something, like there's something very distinct about yourself, or something that you've labeled yourself with, it's a lot easier to answer those questions. So kind of just using that as an example, but I think when we have like these labels or these identities that we instantly kind of identify with and we put on ourselves, it makes those situations more comfortable. So we're so prone to like maybe even forcing labels on ourselves sometimes when those labels don't really reflect who we are, or maybe we force those labels on ourselves when those labels are things that don't actually serve us and they actually make us feel worse, or make us have worse behaviors going forward. So like when I was thinking about my training and thinking about these shifts I made and how difficult it was, because I was like, okay, I finally nailed down the cardio stuff and now I'm getting into the muscle building stuff, and like I'm very small. Like I don't have a lot of muscle, and it was uncomfortable being in that beginning stage, because I was like, okay, I'm trying to identify as a bodybuilder now. Like in my head, subconsciously I kind of was, but I didn't have much muscle. So I'm like, I'm identifying as a bodybuilder, but I don't have muscle to even look anywhere near a bodybuilder. Like this feels weird. This doesn't feel authentic, right? And then same thing when it came to like powerlifting. When I shift to powerlifting, I started in my head like trying to identify as a powerlifter, maybe posting some of my powerlifting lifts online on social media, just to keep a log for myself or whatever, for whatever reason. And my lifts were very small. Like the first time I maxed out on squat, I squatted like 205 pounds, which isn't very much for being somebody in college. Like that was when I first maxed out on squat. And like I would post my lifts and be like, oh, like 1 rep max, 265, and I failed. And I remember there was this video specifically that I posted of me failing a 265 pound squat. And like for somebody my size, as a male, my age, somebody who identifies as a powerlifter, 265 pound squat isn't that high in the powerlifting realm, especially when I fall into the trap of comparing myself to all these other super high level lifters, like the best in the country or the best in the world, right? So there was this like weird, uncomfortable feeling of me identifying as a powerlifter, but me not having the results or not being as strong as what a powerlifter would be. And I'm like, feel like an imposter. I feel like I'm identifying as something that I actually am not. And I think, we do this, or, if you're somebody who is trying to change your life, change your health, lose weight, get in better shape, it's easy to fall into that weird, uncomfortable feeling too when you start to make these changes. Because if you're somebody, let's say you've grown up your whole entire life, somebody who has been overweight for most of your life, you've always felt, you've always lacked this confidence in your body. You've always had these certain behaviors of maybe not going to the gym, maybe behaviors of getting fast food frequently versus making food at home, and you've always, fallen into these crash diets, these yo-yo diets that were super extreme. You start to identify yourself with all of those characteristics. You start to identify as somebody who doesn't eat healthy. You identify as somebody who doesn't work out. You identify as somebody who doesn't have time to work out, even though you actually probably do, but you just never made the time. Or you start to identify as somebody who just lacks confidence. Like, you identify with lacking confidence. That's like a part of you now. And then you make this change, and you start to change your behaviors to eat healthier, to work out, to start prioritizing your health and start thinking in that way. And it feels weird. It feels inauthentic. It feels uncomfortable, because in your mind, in the inside, you're trying to identify as this, like with those behaviors, but in the outside, you feel like you don't have the physical results to display and show that. So you almost feel like an imposter in that sense too. You're like, how can I identify as somebody who is fit, is healthy, who prioritizes their health, who works out, when I'm still maybe 50 pounds overweight, because you're just getting started. And I think that happens a lot with clients, and I think it's a big reason why we sometimes sabotage ourselves, is because we've held on to these like old identity patterns so much, and we're trying to identify these new, or we're trying to adopt these new identity patterns, but we're in those beginning uncomfortable stages, those beginning imposter stages, where we don't necessarily feel like we have the end result or the physical result or the outside result that reflects that. So we're like, how can I call myself fit? How can I convince myself that I do prioritize my health when, I still get out of breath walking up the stairs, or I still, feel uncomfortable in my clothes, where, all of these other people who identify as fit and healthy, they seem so confident. They seem like they, can fit in anything they want, and don't have to second guess, what type of clothes they're putting on, or all of these things. And I think it's a hard thing a lot of people go through, and I think it's a big reason why a lot of people sabotage themselves, because that like middle ground, that period where you're trying to adopt this new identity while trying to adopt these new behaviors is uncomfortable. It feels like no man's land. And it's so much easier to then revert back to our old behaviors that we've, identified with, or that we've had for our whole entire lives, right? Because that's where comfort is, something that we've done forever, even if it is something that has been hurting us, has been hurting our body, has been hurting our mental health, has been hurting our well-being as a whole. Because it's familiar to us, it's comfortable. So it's so much easier to go backwards. But the real way to get through this is to just keep pushing forward. And then once you've done these new behaviors long enough, then they really start to stick with your identity. Because, you think about these new behaviors you're trying to adopt. If you just started 3-4 weeks ago, and you've been living an unhealthy lifestyle, or yo-yo dieting, or doing these extreme things for years or months, that's a lot of behaviors and habits you have to undo, and it's going to take more time. So I guess my whole gist around this episode was just, I wanted to just bring to light this struggle that I think a lot of people go through. And I think a lot of people, they're in this beginning stage of trying to adopt new habits, adopt this new identity of somebody who's fit and healthy, and they feel this like resistance, this like friction, and they don't really know what it is. And I think hopefully this podcast episode will help, if you're dealing with this, it'll help you to identify what that friction is. And I think if we can identify that this is why, or this is what's happening, we can understand it a little bit better. We can have a little bit more grace with ourselves when we're dealing with this. And then we also realize or can understand the way to get past this, which is just to keep moving forward. Give yourself more time. You can't reverse years and years and months of these thoughts about yourselves or these identities or the things that you've identified with in just a few weeks. It's going to take more time. It's going to take more consistency. And we just got to keep pushing and keep moving forward and keep, ingraining these thoughts in our head as much as we can. And eventually, if you keep going, you'll, internally, you'll start to really feel like this is true, and you'll stop feeling like an imposter. But then also externally, you'll see the results too, which will help you to not feel like an imposter as well. So just wanted to come on here and kind of rant about that a little bit. Was on my mind, and I thought it was really eye-opening when I kind of dug a little bit deeper there. So you guys know I love diving into this mindset stuff. I think it makes such a big difference, and it's if you can know exactly what to do, but if you don't fix the mindset behind your transformation you're trying to achieve, you're never going to get there. So hopefully this was helpful. Hope you guys are having an amazing week. Appreciate you for listening, and I will see you in the next one.